all of you. We would like to welcome all of you for this great event wherein we are going to celebrate our dear Dick Nelson, Professor Richard R. Nelson. Friends, you know that Professor Richard Nelson has been celebrated many times for his enormous contribution for the profession that he has done. And most of them were during the time when he was 90. And that happened to be a period wherein the world was struck with the COVID-19 pandemic. The GlobalX presidency at that time wanted to have a get-together, but somehow the Zoom and other techniques were not very familiar. We could not organize. So recently, the GlobalX presidency came with the idea of celebrating Dick Nelson, particularly when we came to know that given his difficulty to undertake long travel, he may not be able to join us for the 20th GlobalX anniversary conference being planned in Kerala, India. And that is why this particular event. And how this event is different from the other events which were organized earlier. This is quintessentially an event basically from the scholars from Global South. And we are respecting all his contribution to our profession. And I'm not here to talk long for about it. And I'm very, very happy that Erika, on behalf of the presidency and the GlobalX Scientific Board, and Franco, I would say we all know that Franco is very close to the heart of Dick Nelson, and we three work together to design this program in which we have been guided eminently by our dear Ben O'Kay, and he said that ideally Northern scholars should not be there. It should be basically by the scholars from the South. But we thought we are living in a world wherein, and particularly GlobalX is essentially a network of North and the South. And in fact, we wanted to organize that in that true spirit of North, South, South, South partnership. So we most warmly welcome all of you for this event. And I invite Erika, President GlobalX, to briefly address you and set the rules of the game to see that our chairpersons of the 4 sessions are not put into any embarrassing positions. I know that our dear colleagues, wonderful colleagues, will collaborate because a very long program, Professor Dick Nelson may not be able to stand, it's too long. And also, we will definitely give you a time to talk all what you want to talk on a later occasion. This is a prelude to that. With this, I invite our dear Erika, President, to address all of you and set the stage rolling.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, KJ. It's really an honor and a great opportunity to have this event. And I have to thank also KJ for being a major engine to making this happen, as well as Franco. Thanks so much. And for everybody that is here, we currently have nearly almost 76, nearly 80 people that have joined, and I'm sure there will be others that would be joining as the event moves forward. So So very briefly, and KJ has already reminded us that we are short with time, so I'm not going to take a very long time to make any introductions, but I thought it would be good to just spend a couple of minutes. We all know, I think everybody that is here knows Dick Nelson. Thanks so much for being here with us today. Dick, this is a very great occasion. But so I don't need to sort of summarize your CV in any way. And I think there's a lot of scholars and friends that are here to sort of discuss some of the contributions that the key contributions that you've made to the field. But Dick Nelson is a prominent scholar that is well known worldwide for his contributions to the field of innovation and technical change. His work has been extremely influential worldwide in building our understanding of the dynamics of innovation processes and technological change and the implications for economic development. Dick has been central in GlobalX as one of the founding members of the network. He's been there from the beginning, and he's been central in shaping the theoretical and conceptual foundations of GlobalX. He has also been an active participant in many of the GlobalX activities, and he has been driving some of the key global projects at a time when GlobalX had big global projects such as the Catch-Up project that had major ramifications in terms of influencing the direction of research within the network, as well as capacity building and policy implications. So this is the summary from my side. We have a range of friends and colleagues and scholars in GlobalX that will be discussing different aspects of the contributions, and it's great to have a structured discussion like that, so we can actually advance and sort of work through some of these contributions with Dick Nelson as part of the discussion here. So it's really a valuable opportunity for all of us. We thought also, as KJ mentioned, that with the occasion of this 20-year anniversary, we thought it would be a very suitable occasion to get back to some of these foundational ideas that Dick Nelson has been the main contributor of, and sort of revisit those and have this as an opportunity of those discussions that we're having for the 20-year anniversary. So we have, as KJ mentioned, 4 sessions coming forward. Sorry, I had them here. We will start with the first session on the contributions to GlobalX and economic development. With the panelists will be Bentoke and Franco and Luc Suter. Then the session 2 will be about Dick Nelson and GlobalX. Yes, the section 2 would be on Dick Nelson and GlobalX, where we have the chair would be Judith Suits, and we'll have also a range of panelists, Raja Rashia Mamomuchi, Michiko Isuka, Rasigan Maharaj, Abdelkader Jeflat. The third session will be focused around contributions on innovation and development, chaired by Susan Cousins, with panelists Jorge Katz, Smita Srinivas, Bitrina Diamet, Yunjin, Dinesh Abrol, and Lakvinder Singh. The fourth session would be around catching up, the contributions around catching up, chaired by Gabriela Dutrenit. The panelists would be Kyun Lee, Jan Fagerberg, Sunil Mani, Paratapong, and Rajesh. And then we'll have a time for open floor discussions and some final reflections from Dick Nelson. The panelists and the chairs, they have received the guidelines on how to proceed with each of the sessions. So with that, I would like to give the floor to the first panelist, Bentoke. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure, of course, to have a chance to tell Dick how much I appreciate him as a friend, as a colleague, and in relation to his role for GlobalX. It's a really great pleasure. First, of course, your work, your scientific work has been a great inspiration. I think if you should make a selection, you would say that trying to get people to understand that economic development is an evolutionary process would perhaps be what you regard as your most important contribution. And of course, many Global X members would point to your important work on national innovation systems. But there are so many other things you've done. And I would just like to mention two things, which I have found extremely useful and which I think are very useful for Global X in the current era. You wrote a small booklet with Sylvia Ostry, which came out through the Brookings Institute, 1995, and it was called Techno-Nationalism and Techno-Globalism. I think the issues raised in that little book are now extremely important to understand. We had a long period of techno-globalism, which was dominated by Washington consensus, and where important parts of the world were definitely left behind, not least Africa. And now we are in a new situation where we see techno-nationalism in great powers in United States and China. And I think it's a major challenge to try to understand what does this mean for developing countries in different parts of the world. What does it mean in terms of new threats and difficulties to get access to knowledge, etc., and what opportunities could it offer? Another book which I found extremely important, it's a paper you wrote with Edmund Phelps. It's from 1966, and it's called Investment in Humans, Technological Diffusion and Economic Growth. And it was published in American Economic Review. In this paper, as I read it, you discuss, in a sense, the co-evolution of an interaction between investment in higher education and innovation. I think it's quite conventional to think that higher innovation is good for innovation. But I think what you show in this paper is that innovation is good for the demand for academic personnel, for highly trained expertise. And in many developing countries, especially those where you might have academic unemployment, I think it's very important to understand that one way to solve this problem is to promote innovation. Okay, but then I would say that your contribution to Global X goes far beyond the inspiration we have found in your scientific work. You have always showed a genuine interest in what young scholars are doing, and you have always found time to act as a patron for new projects and institutional initiatives around the world. I think Luc would point to Merit, and myself, I would point to Druid in Denmark, where you came even to Aalborg to support our work. And when Luc, José Casciolato, Shu Linggu, Mamomuchi, and others joined forces with me to establish Global X, you became involved from the very beginning. You took part in the first GlobalX conference, 2003. You have actually participated in most of the following conferences. You became active member of the GlobalX Scientific Board, and as mentioned, your catch-up project used GlobalX as a kind of meeting place, and it was exemplary in linking together scholars from the North and South, which is at the very core of GlobalX culture. So, dear Dick, let me end by thanking you on behalf of all the many young scholars, but also mature scholars from all around the world who have learned from you, both in terms of scientific insights and in terms of human qualities. Scholarship is today primarily evaluated based on numbers of publication and citation, and you would certainly come out at the top on such an evaluation. But your impact goes much far beyond that. You have played a key role in establishing a culture of knowledge sharing and humanity in our field of research. And this culture is what gives us hope that GlobalX will foster new generations of scholars who can contribute to a better and more equitable world. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Bentoke, for those remarks and so for sticking to time. I know it's not easy because there's a lot to say, but let me give the floor to Franco.
Well, I'm also very happy to celebrate you, Dick, and I'm also happy to be in person here with you. And I'm sure that all the globalist community would like to be also here around this table, and I'm sure that they will share these moments in a very deep way. What I want to do as an introduction, a few minutes, just to share with you and with the globalist community some of your, as you say, variegated aspects of your profession and as a person. First of all, I want to celebrate you as a scholar. I think that everybody will do that for your path-breaking and masterful contributions. Of course, evolutionary theory, your landmark book on evolutionary theory of economic change, but also in all your work, you have a consistent and strong view of the economy as a dynamically evolving system. And this brings in all your analysis of economic change, of innovation, of institutions, on economic growth, and also a focus on the heterogeneity across technologies, heterogeneity across firms, sectors, and countries. And this is quite important for GlobalX and economic development, because in a sense, you push the view of development seeing in a broad way as the absorption, accumulation, and creation of scientific and technological knowledge, learning and capability and innovation, and the pervasive role of institutions. So these are things that probably people in the various panels will discuss. What I want to just mention here is two aspects of your many relevant and path-breaking contribution. One is your methodology. I think the globalist community has learned from you that a good methodology is to start from empirical analysis, uncover facts and regularities, do appreciative theorizing, and eventually use formal theory as a tool, as an instrument for the analysis. And I think this is a very important lesson for all of us, the globalist community that are interested in development and innovation. The second is you as a great interdisciplinary scholar. I mean, you broke down barriers among disciplines, disciplinary boundaries, Your contributions span from, of course, economics, history, political science, and technology. Think of, Benteke mentioned a couple of them. I think of the moon and the ghetto, or the invention of the transistor. So these are very important for the whole globalist community to break down disciplinary boundaries in order to explain phenomena. The second aspect, the variegated aspect of your person, is you as a great mentor and a fantastic person to work with. I've been a student of yours at Yale. Your course was a revelation for me. You have been a great mentor of my PhD dissertation, full of inspiration, suggestion, and so on. You are able to listen, encourage people, give ideas, and also your door, and this also is reflected on your career. Your door of your office was always open for students to come in, ask questions, and so on. And you are a wonderful person to work with. I had the honor and the privilege to write 2 books with you. One was the history-friendly model book with the Gang of 4, with Sid Winter and Guido Senigo. And the other is Economic Development as a Learning Process, with a lot of friends of ours. And working with you, Dick, is very pleasant, but also very intense. I mean, we do rigorous work. You do appreciative theorizing. You share ideas. You are very eager to discuss, but also quite able to listen. And if you disagree, you make your point gently, but firmly. And you make sure that the other person understands your point. And at the end, you usually convince the other of what you're saying. And also off work, it's wonderful to be with you because you are a very social and interactive person with a lot of hospitality and kindness. And the last point, and then is also you, Dick, as a leading member of many visible and invisible colleges that are all connected. I'm thinking of the general evolutionary community. I'm thinking of the Schumpeter Society, and I'm thinking also globalists. And you are extremely generous with your time and your energy with everybody. I've seen you talking with young researchers and more mature scholars. You read all the papers. You go to the core of the argument. You discuss and give comments and feedbacks. You are patient in discussing. You have been extremely helpful for generations and the generation of young scholars that really owe you a big debt. And also, let me just to conclude, you are an excellent organizer of group of scholars. I remember the National Innovation System book, the Sources of Industrial Leadership, and also your recent book, Modern Evolutionary Economics. In a sense, you bring in heterogeneous scholars that think maybe a little bit different. You are able to get the best out of them by interacting with them, talking with them, and at the end, this project of very heterogeneous people have a coherence, a strong coherence due to you. So in a sense, Dick, you have tremendously inspired and guided us, and you pushed forward incessantly and vigorously our intellectual and scholarly agenda. So we all owe you tremendous gratitude and enormous debt. Thank you, Dick.
Thank you very much, Franco. You have hardly left anything else for others to speak. And the student knows his teacher better than anybody else. And let us see how a friend looks at. May I call Professor Luc Suter.
Well, thanks very much, KJ, and thanks, Eureka. But I first have to complain because this is not acceptable. Franco sitting there next to Dick, and we are all at, I mean, sorry, Franco, but you can't do this to us, you know, and I'm sorry to say I would have liked to sit on that table, not just to talk to everybody, but to talk to Dick. So there is a clear disadvantage from us as compared to you sitting next to him there. But anyway, whatever it may be, I think that you know, the subject, this first topic is really Dick's interest in global development, and in particular also Globalix. And I think, as Bengtoke mentioned, Dick really got involved in these issues, I would say, through national systems of innovation, through the debates we had with Keith Pavitt, if you remember, about nations as opposed to internationalization. And we had lots of discussions about this, and this was, of course, the 80s and the 90s, etc. And we started to have debates about, you know, should we continue to work just on our little nations? You know, I'm from a small country, so there was not much to say about small countries, so we had a bit of a bias there. But then finally, I met Bengtoke, and we talked about us, Globalix and Asterix in a little village, small countries, you know. We really needed to convince the big countries, the big guys. And I think this is where we probably succeeded in convincing people that we could do something on a comparative basis by enlarging and look at the community here. I mean, I really am flabbergasted to see all these old friends, people. And in particular, I would say, Dick, we discovered the importance of looking at the South. And I still would argue that Globalix has been unique in really challenging the dominance of Northern researchers in terms of discussions about science, technology, innovation, and global development. And I think the breakthrough Globalix has made is to bring in the Sun research community, and to bring it in a clever way. And I think I really owe to Lundvald, to Bengtoke there, all the credits of saying, no, we're going to organize conferences in the South. And of course, Bengtoke, remember, we started with Brazil, and we continued with the BRICS, and we continued, and then finally kept, with a couple of exceptions, the way forward to say we only meet in Sun countries. And we try to find a way by which all scholars, also those from the South, can attend. Of course, I know we live now in this digital world with seeing people on distances, etc. But I can guarantee you that meeting people physically, Dick, in terms of meeting them physically, is still a big advantage. So I fully appreciate KJ's point that you can't make India for our 20th anniversary of Globalix. And this is the second best, for sure. And apart from Franco, who has still the first best, we all stuck in the second best. Let me come to some of the challenges, Dick, which I would like to raise, which I think Bengtoke already hinted at in terms of our current environment and the challenges from our current environment. I think if we look at really the literature and what has emerged following, you know, first, of course, the financial crisis, then, of course, COVID-19, now this emerging nationalism, which Bengtoke talked about, he referred to China and the US. I would, if I may, Bengtoke, I would add Europe to it as a new nationalism emerging also in Europe. Whether this will work, I'm not sure about, because European identity and European nationalism, talking about technological sovereignty or strategic autonomy, seems to me to be something of an oxymoron. But anyway, we will see. But what you see is an emergence of critiques of what I think Bengtoke, myself, and you, Dick, stand for, which is this global vision on terms of global access to knowledge, global catching up, etc. And later on, people will talk much more in detail about it, but which is being sort of challenged. I refer in particular to some of Gruwel's comments, the Gruwel, more of a political scientist, arguing that basically the international dimensions, the international order of peaceable and cooperating states was a big world historical gamble of the 90s. And that this neoliberal vision in which basically international trade led to development is something which is being undermined today and is being questioned even today by saying that this was a vision of a sort of a global market-led global order which required something of states as a hands-tied or hands-off approach to the use of governmental power. And a challenge I would put back to you, Dick, is what do you think of this current developments of each of these large political powers, this geopolitics changing at the global level and challenging to some extent the international order, which we as a Globalix community stood for? That's all. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Luke. You are not different. You're always unique. And you have also disclosed the art of making strong global network. And thank you very much. Now, I think the first session was so disciplined. Now we move to the next session, which is going to be chaired by Professor Judith Sutz. Over to you, Judith.
Hello. Hello, everybody. It's really so great to be here with you. Wonderful. Before giving the floor to the panelists, I would like to make just 3 points and share one anecdote. The first point is the following. Every endeavor requires normative guidance, a sense of purpose and responsibility. Given that the world, which should be fair for all, is far from being so, and moreover, unfairness tends to be more salient the more to the south you look. Some thought about how to cope with this fact is needed, particularly so for an endeavor like GlobalX, because this session is Richard Nelson and GlobalX. Dick Nelson provided pragmatic normative guidance, but asserting, and I quote, "What is a problem and what is a solution are not questions that rational analysis alone can decide. The question of what values and whose values ultimately are to count is inherently a question that must be answered through political process." End of quotation. This assertion goes directly to the heart of globalic ethics. Problems and solutions are not universal, geographically, socially, or even technologically. They depend on what values and whose values are to count, and so one size does not fit all. The second point is that GlobalX wants to promote change. People belong to GlobalX because they share a common will to build a better world through learning, innovation, and competence building. But as far as politics is concerned, we need to be backed by sound possibilities. And Dick Nelson warned us against the illusion that we are stronger than we really are. And I quote, "To what extent are the kind of technological innovation a society is getting and not getting a function of the innovation system in place? And can't we orient our innovation systems so that the advances we get are better directed to something, to meeting society's most pressing needs? Those of us advocating reform of innovation systems need to be careful not to promise success or promise success where success is unlikely. And this is a warning, but also a promise that if we are careful enough, we will be able to achieve valuable change here on Earth." Third point, Dick Nelson helped GlobalX not only with normative and policy wisdom, but with theoretical wisdom as well. What he wrote with Sidney Winter more than 40 years ago is yet to be internalized. I quote, "What real consideration could produce a sharp boundary between technically possible and technically impossible production activities? The boundary is the boundary of knowledge. The boundaries of knowledge can be pushed further in quite different directions. In times of climate change and rising inequality, the assertion that conquering the impossible is an issue of knowledge gives the energy to keep on searching." And last, let me share with you an anecdote. It happened in GlobalX China, the third conference, 2004. Dick Nelson was appointed discussant of the paper presented by a very young Chinese scholar. She was so nervous that she was trembling like a leaf. After her exposition made struggling with her English, Dick Nelson rose and approached her, oblivious of the audience, just talking to her in a soft voice. She transformed, and the answers she provided to Dick's questions were given in a wonderfully assertive way. I never forgot this proof of Dick Nelson academic kindness, a mark of human and intellectual greatness. And so now I would give the floor to Raha Rasha, please.
Thank you, Judith. I am really happy to be here, although I just flew in from Shenzhen some half an hour ago. I believe everyone has talked about so much about Dick's intellectual contributions. I'm sure we can go on and have a lot more to say. I, as a student, though I was never a formal student like being registered to do a course under him, but I always regard myself as a student. among the many things I learned from him, I wanted to mention two things. One of which is the understanding, the meaning of institutions and institutional change. I think I got it from him first, reading his book, his works, talking to him. And then, of course, I went back and read Veblen, for example, and came back to understand, in my understanding, perhaps you can correct me, Dick, mainstream economics is not evolutionary. If you are looking at an evolutionary dimension to something, I think mainstream economics is not. And I saw that, if I'm not mistaken, in Veblen's work. But that's very clear from the work that I've read and the many discussions I had with Dick. That was very clear to me, and in a meaning that was understandable to me, especially so when he talks about the semiconductor industry, contrasting, say, the US with how it evolved in the East. And it is very much something that fits into development because development has phases of evolution. Now, I regard in that sense, if Schumpeter is the man behind innovation, to me, Dick is the father for me on institutions and institutional change. Now, I also wanted to mention something else I found very much in sync with what Judith mentioned. When I became the chair to organize this Globalix conference, and of course, one of the biggest pillar for Globalix, Ben Toker, asked me to organize. I actually saw the reviews of students' papers by Dick and Ben Toker. I can't possibly see anyone else, such scholars being empathetic, compassionate in the way they were reviewing it, giving highly constructive suggestions in very, very polite way. I think this is some of the leadership elements that we should have that I see not terribly common though. I really hope these things come into play, if at all. KJ, you're going to be organizing the next conference. I hope all that will somehow show up in the way papers are being reviewed and the way people are being treated. If you want to welcome, if I'm not mistaken, this was the major platform to promote evolutionary economics as a force. So in that sense, I don't want to take up much time. Thank you very much, Dick. I'm so happy to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that was absolutely great. Thank you so much, Raja. So now is the time of Mama Muchi, please. The floor is yours.
Unmute your mic, please.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Thank you very much also. I also learned very much from all of you already. And, you know, Richard Dick Nelson is very good to me. Chris Freeman, Dick Nelson, Bentoke, Luke Sutu, all of them, they are just like family to me. I really appreciate them, and I learned a lot from them. And on this innovation system, without them, I would not have been engaged in it. And now I'm trying to see if I could contextualize it in the African setting. So that's what I'm trying to do. But for Dick Nelson, just personally, when I was in New York, the way he treated me was incredible. And I also had an idea when Globalix, the first Globalix, I said to Bentoke, always putting Africa first and making of African innovation systems. So I said the Globalix first president should be African. So if we do that, then we get the global, you know, the colonial system, something like that. Then he was kind the way he advised me. I said, Mamo, don't get engaged in this. He was kindly really told me and advised me, and I listened to him nicely and things like that. So he's been really, generally as a person also, is very kind and very graceful and very nice. But I just want to say a few things that are different thinking I got from reading his books. One of them is from the ghetto, the moon and the ghetto. He says, if we can put a man on the moon, why can't we solve the problem of the ghetto? And then he said, we must also have open-minded dialogue and a sequential experimental approach to any hard problem the world faces, he says. That's extraordinary. This is an approach. Another one, very, very important, what he said, and which all of us should do. Economic growth is not just smart growth. just validation through market and commercial success and profit making. He says it should be inclusive. He also said things like that. And I think the other thing is on government and democracy. He challenges it also. Fascinating how he did it. And the way on the market side too. It's not just the states should not be just there to address market failure. That's not the real issue, he says. Even what kind of market is appropriate and works well with the state must be, that relationship must be done, he said. So the state and market, government and democracy, all right, smart and inclusiveness. And all these things are critically important that he in his thinking, in all the paradigm shift, also technological paradigm shifts, things like that he thought about is fascinating. And I think this thinking is the area we should all focus on. You all have been saying about the global challenges we face now. We not only face the global challenges, as you say, climate change, COVID-19, we also face the digital technology global challenge. Artificial intelligence is also a problem. The creator now has left. He said there's so many strange things are happening. So the technology itself is creating challenges for us. I wish Dick Nelson could write also another very important thought piece for all of us linked to this critical approach. This I'm thinking the whole way by which we could also revalidate and reuse very effectively the digital technology time we're all in is very important. I wish I had a chance to write a paper with him, and I hope he still is young, so I hope we can write something also on Africa. I really appreciate you. Thank you. I admire you. Love you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Unmute your mic, please. Unmute your mic.
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Mamo. And now the girl in the team, Michiko, please. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. Happy birthday, Professor Dick Nelson. I'm very honored to have a small time here together with a very distinguished panelist. And I hope, and it's also a bit difficult to say because I was also thinking about mentioning Moon and Ghetto, which is your, I think amongst, of course, in addition to other contributions that you made on the national system innovation and evolutionary theory, but one that stands out and also very relevant to Globelix, because this session is supposed to think about the Globelix. And I think this book, which was written in 1977, and it was also translated into Japanese. I don't know whether you can see it, but this was translated by Professor Goto in 2012, because the message that the book generates is very much alive in 2012, but I think it is still alive because, as Mamo was also mentioning, the question whether the moon, why, if we can land a man on the moon, why can't we solve the problem of the ghetto? And then this still is very alive. And it also kind of mentions about the complexity of the problem. And the technology cannot solve certain problems. And these techno-fix kind of approach can also be applicable to a current digital technology like ChatGPT. I mean, they are useful for certain things, but not everything. And then we need to kind of go into more details about what the technology can do and cannot do. So I really admire your work, which sort of goes various, transcend the time, because the problem that we have is very much the same in the essence. So I really hope that you would stay with us, with the Globelix community, so we will be able to continue learn from you, so that we would be able to find some innovative solution for current global south as well as global north, I think that we are also needing a lot of solution for our global north as well. But thank you very much, and I hope you have a very nice birthday.
Thank you very, very much, Michiko. And now, please, Rasigan, the floor is
Thank you
yours.
very much. Thanks very much to all the colleagues. You know, it's the sincerest thanks and gratitude that I offer both to Globelix Network, through whom I was afforded the opportunity of coming to know Richard R. Nelson. And it's quite different in terms of what the Globelix community afforded us from the Global South. A different perspective other than merely reading people's biographies and trying to follow what they've said in terms of placing in front of us theoretical understandings of the world that we live in. So, thanks to Dick for allowing me to participate in the Catch-Up project, and specifically all the lessons around intellectual property itself. You know, when we look at your career running across from Yale to the RAND Corporation to MIT, Carnegie Mellon, you know, sitting on Kennedy's Council for Economic Advisors, back to Yale, back to Columbia. And I think it was around the Columbia period, the late Columbia period, that we managed to meet. You know, the significance of what you've contributed to how we think about the world is immense. You know, from 1959, the question of market failure, as you put it up, then as a reason for public support for technological innovation. And more especially thereafter, when you said this was a disastrous way to think of the role of the state and encouraged us to assume a more evolutionary perspective, which laid the basis for your canonical work with Sid Winter, the evolutionary theory of economic change. All of these have framed very important and significant contributions to how we understand not only the field, but the world that we live in. I had to digress a little bit there because I had based my input on the moon and the ghetto as well. And I realized as people were speaking, we needed to also be adaptive and shift ourselves, hence me moving a little to the side. But I must return to the moon and the ghetto, as you have revisited it as well. The question about the uneven distribution of technological progress remains a key issue that confronts us. In fact, in much of the polycrisis now enveloping the entire planet and steering us towards a precipice of catastrophe, the type of work that you generated is so significant and so important. Some may even argue that some of the conflicts that we face now are essentially a technological conflict as well. And it's about packing together knowledge systems against each other. But our contemporary conjuncture, albeit combined, remains uneven, you know, and because of that unevenness, the contradictions underpinning them will, of course, lead to crises and catastrophes. We experienced this most recently, and I'm really quite sore that maybe we did not take what Dick had advised us more to heart. We experienced vaccine apartheid, where it seemed to be more important to protect the intellectual property right holders rather than afford people the possibility of living longer lives. And this showed us the force, the huge quality embedded in Dick's work itself. And this is what I really embrace because of the perspective and ideological position I advance. We should all be reminded of the need to reread, re-engage, especially with the critical work that Dick has afforded us. You know, I think we have the possibility now in the second decade of Globelix to reignite a more progressive sense of what the future holds for us. And for us to do that, I think Dick's work really lays the basis. You know, so notwithstanding, I mean, all the way from Benteke, Lukic, and all the colleagues that have spoken to now, you know, there have been previous acknowledgements, there's been past celebrations, but colleagues, I encourage that we pay more attention to recognizing more the work of Dick, and we really should be encouraged to have a deeper, increased engagement. This would serve us well. You know, so warmest regards to Dick, warmest regards to Globelix. We are here in this community because of you all, and together, hopefully, we can survive the current public crisis and advance perspectives for a better world that works for us all. Thank you so much, Dick.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Rasigan. And now, Abdelkader, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. The floor is
Thank
yours.
thank you very much. Greetings to everyone. I am also greatly honored and delighted to be part of this tribute to Dick, who well deserved, and of course Dick has had a great impression on impact on all of us. I would like to be more practical, I would say. What has Dick contributed to building GlobalX network, and in what sense? I have 4 points, I think, and some of them have been already mentioned. I think Dick has been instrumental in shaping GlobalX research agenda, as everybody said, quite in depth, actually, and both through his writing and, of course, various contributions at GlobalX conferences, and setting firmly the network in evolutionary thinking, and also sometimes and often clarifying the conceptual base, as he did, for instance, in the keynote address he presented at Beijing in 2004, for example. And in that respect, I think he was a source of inspiration to all of us, and highlighted some areas where we should make extra effort and probably renew our analytical tools to contribute to build capacity, particularly in the South. And as pointed out on several occasions by colleagues, the Catch-Up project was quite instrumental, in my view, triggering off other possible avenues of research, such as the one I personally embarked upon, and which is about, of course, what I called then the non-catch-up countries at the Dakar GlobalX, and raising the issue that what happened then to people who are not on that path. They needed, in my view, not only an improved catch-up setup, but real paradigm shift, and in view of the specific institutional setup they lived in. And other colleagues, you proposed that to look perhaps at the heterogeneity of system emergence in different patterns. And this is thanks to Dick, who gave us that right inspiration. I think if it wasn't for the catch-up, I would have never thought about that direction. The second important aspect I think Dick played, and very grateful, is enhancing the attractiveness of and image of GlobalX among researchers in the global South and in Africa, of course, but in all the other continents. I think in addition to his indefectible reputation, Dick played a key role as a mentor for young researchers, doctoral students, has been already mentioned. Has always been very generous in giving a great deal of his time and energy to listen and give orientations. And many of my former doctoral students who met him at GlobalX conference, when they were not really expecting all that kindness, or that attention from such prominent scholar in the world. Third point, I think, from within GlobalX, I think Dick contributed to setting GlobalX firmly on its path and keeping the cap, I would say. I've always been impressed by his indefectible sense of building a research community, whom we kept repeating either when we discussed privately or when we were at the scientific board, and how dedicated he was to that. He kept reminding us always that it is vital that GlobalX doesn't slide away, and that's important, from its principal orientation, which is to contribute to advancing and disseminating understanding of economic development as a process of learning, capability building, and innovation in the broad sense. And another aspect, and I think which has struck me as very important, Dick was an ardent defender of the flexibility, openness, and friendly atmosphere of GlobalX. And he has always been very keen in defending the specificity of the network, our network, When, for instance, at a constitution committee, we were confronted with reviewing some election rules which did not quite match with reality. And when we had opposed views and opinions, Dick was there as a moderating force and brought the sense of balance we sometimes have forgotten. And he rang the bell danger and reminded us that GlobalX would increasingly tie itself in a tangle of written rules and lose much of the openness and flexibility that had been among its most desirable characteristics if we were not careful. And that, I think, that effect was quite helpful in building and keeping GlobalX with that specificity, that culture of the GlobalX. And if we are today, we are all happy 20 years later, and to belong to this community, I think it's also thanks to Dick role. He played a central role. Thank you, Dick, for having been with us and inspiring us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Abdelkader. And now this session about Dick Nelson and GlobalX is over, and I give the floor again
Thank you.
to the organizers. Thank you very much.
I found the interventions were highly passionate and above all highly disciplined, because each one of you have pages and pages and pages to talk about, but you are very disciplined. Thank you very much. May I now invite Susan Cousins to chair the session on Dick Nelson and innovation and development. Over to you.
Sure. Yeah, thank you very much, KJ, and happy birthday, Dick. Thank you for putting us in North American time zones for this meeting. I want to say a few words of thanks before I get to our 6 panelists for this session. First, I want to thank you for being an interdisciplinary economist. I'm sure there are people out there who know that not every economist is really capable of embracing history and social structures and cultures, and you've done a brilliant job of that. I have clear memories of you at meetings of the Society for Social Studies of Science, not a place that many people on the screen have actually been to. And then I also want to thank you for introducing me to GlobalX as my interest turned to the Global South. Folks told me, you really need to talk to Dick Nelson, and you spent time with me on the phone, and you said, well, you know, you need to come to the GlobalX community, and I headed off to South Africa, and the rest is history from there. But one of my favorite memories of you in the GlobalX community is actually dancing on a boat in the Volga River in Saratov. Thank you for that. So we actually do have 6 people in this time slot. Jorge Pets, are you out there? The floor is yours.
Here I am.
Okay, yeah.
You hear me?
Excellent.
Thanks very much,
Thank
Susan,
you.
for calling on me. It's difficult to know really where to start, because most of what one wants to say about Dick has been already said. But it's interesting that I met him at the time in Yale when he was writing The Moon and the Ghetto. And he has just published The Moon and the Ghetto. And I still have the original copy, which is kind of yellow due to the passage of time. But my first point really, Dick, is that the metaphor of the moon and the ghetto is getting worse. I mean, we are now in, and Muti said it, moving into an era in which artificial intelligence and biology and genetics are somehow making the gap between the haves and the have-nots even worse than we have been watching in those years of the 70s, in which still the world was more kind to accept this controversial break between groups in society. We are moving into an era, and this is very important from the point of view of the emerging countries, in which biology and genetics, not only artificial intelligence, are making this gap much harder and much difficult to tackle. And but having said that, I would like to stress the fact that DIC has always been kind of a lighthouse for me. I mean, I think Franco mentioned the word mentor. Yes, it's a mentor. What is a mentor? Is somebody who somehow gives me ideas as to how this profession can enlighten the way people think about welfare, not for the higher 20% or 30% of the society, but for the lower 40% of the society, which is being kept very much outside of the picture. And it's interesting because each time this transition between the narrative, the important narrative that comes from the North in terms of rational expectations, market functioning well, etc., boils down in the South in terms of market failure, in terms of institutions not having the right performance, has been kind of acting in this community. We all share the idea that the conventional neoclassical perception of what economics is all about has been gradually turned into a much more broader perspective, and Susan mentioned it in her introduction, that society is a much complex scenario in which institutions and norms are locally conditioned and not universal. And this is very important for the way we look into the future, as this increasing gap between the moon and the ghetto is kind of reflecting on how do we look at the relationship between markets and society, and markets and state. Throughout all this trajectory, Dick, you have acted as a mentor in my own way of thinking as to what economics is all about. I remember you starting in your Colombian study very neoclassical. The way I did started myself, looking at Argentina in the 60s, quite neoclassical, and that has gone away. I mean, in the way Susan has just said it, in a way, looking at the trajectory that you pointed out to me, that economics was all about, I had to incorporate much more anthropological and sociological issues, which were not present in my original training in the neoclassical thinking. So for all of this, Dick, I really thank you very much, because you have acted not only as a mentor in terms of how I think of what economics is all about, but also as how a professor should act with his students, giving them the time and giving them the access to sharing with them this perception as to how complex the society is and how much you need to reflect not just on economic issues, but on collateral aspects of institutional working and on society functioning. Let me just end my comment by saying that much of my own trajectory has been enlightened by your figure telling me where the lighthouse was indicating I should be going. Thanks very much for being that person, Dick.
Thank you. Smita, do you want to keep following in the light beam from that lighthouse?
Right. Thanks, everyone. Jumping right in. I believe Dick was the one who introduced me to GlobalX. And so I also thank the GlobalX community for inviting me back here. I want to kind of stress the time that I met Dick, because it was a moment where there were a huge number of development cross currents coming up at MIT, at Harvard, at Columbia. And I had the very good fortune of meeting Dick at all of these places. What was interesting about that time was, of course, the great power of Jeff Sachs's center. Danny Roderick was there. There were lots of SDS efforts. Robert Frosch was building something out. Alice Amsden and Judith Tendler were building things out on development. I mentioned them because in a way, Dick stood out despite the fact that he would not have been called a traditional development scholar. Some of his work on his proximity to US advising, science advising, a push back against some of the work of JPAL that was growing at the time, and so on. These were very important cross currents to mention because for someone who was at that stage in my career, Dick was, for all the reasons people have mentioned, very important in signaling that there was an opportunity for a different kind of economics to be done. Now, this was important not just to my own research, as many people have pointed out in their own cases, but also there were very few experts on development who actually had field experience at all or with any real frequency. So Dick was interesting for that reason too. There were surprising lack of development scholars who were microeconomists going out and actually doing some of this work. I met Dick at a time when the catch-up work was just building out. And even though in some respects my work has disagreed with some of his findings, for just to give you an example, I would suggest that the term the Global South is not necessarily true to appreciative theorizing. I do think there's some more work on institutional variety and non-convergence issues that should preoccupy us. But there was no question that I built my learning not just on his work, but on the way he worked. And we shared many, many interests on pharma, biotech, medical devices. And of course, during COVID, I thought of him often because I was co-chairing several global health initiatives. He was also an advisor when I was first founding the Technological Change Lab. Now, two works that deserve special mention. One, of course, has been mentioned, The Moon and the Ghetto. And then the second, The Complexity of Market Organization. I was surprised in a way as a development scholar that these two works didn't become bigger than they were. And in a way, both separately and jointly, that they didn't sort of blow our universe apart a little bit more than us individually learning from them. So I have two quick reactions that I want to share that I think might be reflections for the GlobalX community. One has to do really with universities and their power in the North Atlantic, as we say. They have acted because of this foment and this open debate in some respects, also as disproportionately strong gatekeepers in the production of new knowledge. And I saw this in many ways. I won't go into different examples, but I do think that people who were genuinely interested in a refinement of microeconomics, and the point that Jorge also made, which is this difference of how you would do new theorizing coming out of traditional micro, that work really didn't have a body or a community except for Dick's own efforts. And that development community at large was not particularly encouraged, even at Columbia, and I would say even at Yale or at MIT. That is something, this body of North Atlantic gatekeeping within the university and outside the university, is something that deserves scholarship of its own. And I would really encourage scholars who are thinking about how universities change as core actors in the development landscape to take this more seriously. And the second and last comment I would really like to make is that for scholars outside the Anglosphere or sort of the North Atlantic, is our universities are really, in many respects, they continue to be weak. And I think GlobalX could play a much stronger role in thinking of different professional tracks, inherent challenges of introducing new ideas, not simply taking inspiration from the work of Dick or Bentake or all of them, but understanding, just as scholars of knowledge of and economic development itself, what these hurdles actually mean. So one test would be to understand if, how, why examples such as the moon and the ghetto as an evolutionary study of its own, or the complexity of market organization, really hold up to development scrutiny today, and not become just Boston or New York exemplars. Dick himself did not need to have covered all of this terrain, of course, but if innovation and development scholarship is really to stand on its own or even break away from his excellent contributions, we have to think very seriously about what we have to do ahead in universities. My own skepticism that science, for example, can govern, science and scientists can govern themselves, may reflect one aspect of this challenge. And this has been alluded to in the context of COVID or AI. But I think this is really work that is inspired by his model. And so a very big hats off to Dick. We're lucky to have him. And I'm even luckier to have the chance to do this tribute. Thank you.
Thank you, Smita, for that. I'm really impressed by the various continental perspectives that we have on Dick's work. And so now we will turn to one from Africa. Betrina, you ready? Betrina Diamond from Tanzania.
Yeah, thank you very much, Susan. I really feel honored to be here to be able to say something in this very, I would say, a honorable occasion. I don't know whether I have met Nelson Richard in person. I have, of course, surely I have met him so hugely through his literature and his writing. And it is for this reason I'm so happy today because I could talk to him in person. Actually, Nelson, he's one of the writers and scholars who actually I think shaped my thinking about development, innovation, technical change. Some of the very first books that I read when this topic was being introduced to me when I was doing my master's is his writing. And I think it's a book he co-authored with Winter. It's an evolutionary theory of economic change, I think, and where he was talking about technical change, the firm, and growth. And that really seated deep into my mind when it comes to development. Even today, I really think about the role of the firm is central to development and growth. And it's disturbing for me because I don't think if the firm has really been studied adequately in poor countries, currently poor countries such as Africa. And we don't have competitive firms, and I think that is the problem. And to make matters worse is that innovation now is even taking studies, is taking a different direction, away from growth, away from studies on firm. And I would like Nelson to have a comment on that. I think his book is still very relevant. You know, it was published in 1982. I think it's very relevant. This is one of the points that I wanted to make. The second point is about to Globelix generally, about the innovation scholars. You know, this is something that I am observing in Africa. I don't know how it is elsewhere. It's like the innovation scholars are losing value in society, because basically they are supposed to be policy advisors. And I know that Nelson has really worked in the area of policy, and I think he will understand what I'm talking about. But currently, if you look at development, partners, governments, they run to the practitioners when it comes to policy advice. This is something that I've been observing, and I think I made this point in one of the Africa Leaks meetings. And I think a few of my colleagues actually also supported that. So what is happening? I mean, where are we going wrong as scholars of innovation? I mean, I think this is something that Globelix should be able to address. What is happening if this is the case? Because of course, practice is very important when innovation studies in informing theory. I mean, empirics is very important, but you know, to rely on policy advice on one successful practitioner, one successful startup, you know, isolated cases, they inform policy. And I think it's a big problem. And I think we have to address this problem as quickly as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Betrina. On our continuing dizzying continental journey, because of time constraints. Next, Dinesh.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. Yeah, see, I got attracted to the works of Nelson when India was going to adopt the neoliberal advice, and our policymakers were shifting away and undermining whatever had been achieved through progressive nationalism. That is, I'm talking of 50s till 90s, because Nelson's book on national systems of innovation came around, I think, 93, 94, if I recall. And I used to actually read out, you know, and share the papers to others, saying, here is the experience of the rest of the world. So I would like to really share with Nelson that how we utilized his work in actually not only practical ways, I would call it in a radical way. Okay, a radical meaning we were resisting a change which was going to come, going to be abhorrent, and it has proved to be so. That's evidence is showing it. I was a little surprised, you know, that the discussion which took place between Pavet, Sote, and Nelson had the context of a small country. I come from a large country, but I come from a large country which was colonized. The European powers colonized us, and underdevelopment was the result of that, whether it is in knowledge, whether it is in technology, whether it is in economic development. So in that sense, the national system of innovation was telling us there is another way to look at the world, that a country through progressive nationalism can actually and achieve, and it should not be undermined, and it achieved. And I think 50s to 90s was a period whose legacy even continues till now. Even whatever competitiveness, structural or otherwise, sectoral, actually exists on the basis of whatever actually occurred under the framework of building a national system of innovation. My third point comes, the Sydney Winter, with whom Dick, you collaborated, has actually, in I think, if I remember, in 2017, wrote about national system of innovation not in a manner which is very encouraging. He, in fact, was suggesting that that particular work is not going to give us a theorizing of the kind that is required. I do not know what is your view on that particular matter. I would like to really hear you. I wish you were in Trivandrum. We could have heard you directly and discussed with you. My last point and the fourth point, and I want to be disciplined, KJ has been telling us time and again, saying don't take more time, and I'm certainly not going to take even my 4 minutes. I'm going to take less than that. See, today, capitalism developed dialectically, the evolutionary theory of economic change, which essentially, when all the work that you did, etc., was about how capitalism was being synthesized in some of the advanced capitalist countries. Now, today, that particular capitalism has actually brought what is like when Moon and Gatto discussion is taking place, that the gap is going to be wider further. The nationalism is coming. And at this juncture, what kind of globalization and progressive national systems of innovation need to be, pursued. So China is also asking for globalization. China has emerged by actually, pursuing national development. And otherwise, it would not have emerged. It is not a story of neoliberal globalization. It's not a success story of neoliberal globalization. So I would like to really ask Dick, what is his view currently about the current conjuncture? And lastly, the point, we are facing ecological crisis, economic crisis, climate crisis. At this particular juncture, this economic change, what kind of institutions are required? After neoliberalism has actually given birth to such a monopoly capital, transnational capital, which wants stronger IPRs, it denies actually social progress. What kind of institutions you would like to advance now? I would like to learn from your experience and your theorizing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dinesh. I love all the quiet applause going on. And Dick, unfortunately, this is turning into the discussant task from hell as these various people raise questions for you. And next up to raise even more questions is Junjin from China.
Can you hear me? I'm afraid that's the internet.
Yes, you're good.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. Thanks, and thank you very much. And I think it's my pleasure and to join this the event and talking about what is about the contribution of the Richard Nelson, his studies on the innovation and development in China. I think I'm still remember that the first time I met the Dick Nelson is in Beijing and in the summer of 2006. And that is my first time I joined the CICLIX. I think that is, that is also the first time and to know about the evolutionary economics and about the innovation. And so that is, I think, is a broad way and to know how to look at the industry development and how to look at all the catch up like in China. I think it's as that so many the professors have mentioned, and that talk is and Dick is a good mentor. I think I believe that it's true that it's like from the CICLIX, and we know and we learn a lot, and how nice is as senior professors and leading the scholars. So that is because of the participation of the contribution from the Dicks and Ben Dog as well as the scholars. That is why the CICLIX grows well, and even at now, and we organize the CICLIX Academy and a workshop every year, and many of the leading scholars in innovation and development in China, many of them, they have attended the CICLIX. So this is one aspect. And the other, I think, is the most important, the contribution for the Dick to the Chinese research on innovation and development is the evolutionary economics. And just like I talked with Su-Ling Gu and this afternoon, and then when I asked, and what is the contribution of the Dick on the innovation research in China? And she said, then she talked about the development of the industries and about the catch-up of the China, and as well as like what is about the technology change, technology diffusion, and that is in China. So I think that is a very important. It's for the Chinese research, and the other. So I think that is after 2006 and after the several times the joining of the Dicks in the 60s, and many more and more the Chinese scholars and have used the theories of the evolution economics and to review the technology change and technology diffusion in China. And that is why, and just like now, and even that's like for me, and I will look at the development of the new energy vehicles industries in China and from the evolution perspective. And we look at the co-evolution of the policies, markets, and industrial actors, as well as like the innovation systems. So I think that is important, the contributions. That is very important, and the contributions for the theories and the practice. Even that's the other thing is like we have the, how to say, it's Chinese scholars, they integrate the theories and the research and from the DICS and in with the Chinese context. And we hope we can have contributed to the theory. And the other, I think I also have that one question, and likes to the DIC is just like what will be changing in the innovation and development, as well as the theories with the deep influence of the new technology like the AI and as well as the other technology. I think that is all what I talk. And Susan, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Junjin. We're turning now to Lakwinder Singh. Lakwinder, everything good?
Yes, Susan, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to speak on this very important occasion. First of all, greetings from IndiaLix. On the behalf of IndiaLix scholars and on my own behalf, I congratulate on this happy day, happy birthday to Professor Richard Nelson. And we also thank gratefully that his presence in the discipline of economics made a lot of difference in terms of thinking and all that. I usually believe that the professor has a lot of kind of responsibility to inspire the scholars and future generations. But when I look his work, I recall and remember the phrase calling that teacher who taught me to differ. I think when I read his writings, you'll find that it always raises some of the uncomfortable questions which usually is not being talked about in economic theory, and they are undermined in terms of heavy assumptions which are unrealistic in nature. So when I read his writings, I think the kind of mind which he has, I think if we call a rebellious minded scholar, and I think that his writing shows that the kind of question he asked, he remained a very rebellious scholar in his own times and for all time to come, because his questions are more relevant today than he has asked those kind of questions. And I think that I may also inform you that in the Department of Economics, where I have studied at Punjabi University, Patiala, as well as in the as a teacher also, I have found that in development economics, your book, An Evolutionary Theory of Economic Change, was in syllabus and continue to be in the syllabus and being taught, especially as well as in industrial economics and microeconomics, where we talk about theory of the firm. So I think that has an influence on large number of generation to understand the phenomena of a change which is happening over a period of time, and how firms as well as public policy is being determined, and how differently you have talked about welfare implications as well as development implications over a period of time. I think The most relevant, which has been talked in this audience also, is the moon and the ghetto. I think that is a hugely relevant writing as today is itself, as inequality has skyrocketed in every sphere of the term across and within countries of the world. So I think that is the kind of writing still need to be asked and the implication which results on that. But I will not go deeper into the kind of things which you have been talking about, but the fundamental philosophy which you have used is technology innovations to understand how change happens over a period of time. And I think that the coming to the National Innovation System, where you'll find that your writings, which has come over a long period of time, and especially talking about the public research implications for industrial R&D and knowledge generations, that I think that is the kind of still you'll find that the world has upside down in terms of R&D expenditure, applied fundamental research, as well as public and private. And you have asked those kind of questions at a very early stage when you'll find that people were not thinking about those kind of questions. I think that the building of a public policy and a national innovation system, even if system was not talked about up to the late 90s or early 90s, but you have been talking about quite early about all these kind of things, which were later on has been turned out to be a movement in terms of turning out to be a global X and then the regional X. So my most important question, which I would like to ask, and I usually ask myself also, is to end with today's intervention, that what has happened over a period of time, that your thinking, which was expected and is expected to be the dominant thinking in the mainstream, which has not percolated the way it should have been, do you think that there is a dichotomy between politics and economics, which you have been talking about? And if you have been, if you agree with this dichotomy, how this dichotomy can be bridged? That is a fundamental question which need to be asked, so that the kind of thinking which you have been talking about and processing over a long period of time has not shown much result in the public policy making, where you'll find that new classical economics dominates and continue to be dominated in terms of policy making across the world, and why you'll find that free market is winning, although you have been talking about that state has a very important role to play. So this dichotomy need to be resolved, to my understanding. With this, I would like to thank that you have been for a long period of time giving us the kind of new philosophy and the studies which you remain, I think, seminal contributions over a long period of time. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Lakhwinder. And thank you to this whole panel who've given there's so much emphasis in these comments about things, ideas that Dick introduced that were ahead of their time in mainstream thinking in the news in a lot of places, with the moon and the ghetto being obviously a prominent example of that. It was quite a while before the economics profession and public policy figured out, oh, we've got a lot of inequality out there. What are we going to do about it? So thank you, Dick, for being a pioneer in that way. I will now pass the baton to Gabriela Dutronit to chair the last panel.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, please go ahead, Gabriela.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I am very happy to be here celebrating Dick's birthday, and several of his contributions and the reason for which we are grateful to him have already been highlighted. We are moving now to his contributions to our understanding of catching up processes. We have here 5 colleagues who are going to highlight his contribution in this direction. I give the floor to Kyun Lee.
Thank you. It's great to see all of our Global X and Ketchup community scholars. We have not meeting us due to this 3 years of COVID. Now, this is when we meet, but I hope we can meet in next Indian Global X. So for the Ketchup part, I'd like to mention specifically 4 Ketchup project, initiated and organized and led, okay? And each of them resulted in the book. So let me explain all these 4 things, okay? Actually, I guess I'm not, if I'm not wrong, first time I met Dick was in the 2004 Global X held in Beijing. And there we are discussing starting this Ketchup project, okay? And first one is about the sectoral system. And the first meeting was held in New York in 2005. Okay, and we had a big celebrating party at the residence of the Jeffrey Sachs. Okay, and then that's the beginning of the Ketchup project. The first outcome was the book edited by Franco and Dick, published in 2012, Eduardo Elga, about sectoral immune system in Ketchup. That's where we learn about sector evolution as interaction of technical regime and market regime and actors' role, including institution. Okay, and he was involved very closely in this project. Second project was what IPR and Ketchup. Initial meeting was held in Tokyo with Odagiri and others. He also participated in person. And that project led to the book called Intellectual Property Right, Development and Ketchup by Oxford University Press, published in 2010. This book is now widely cited to have big influence over the IPR and innovation Ketchup issues. Okay. Then third book out of Ketchup project about firm capabilities. Okay, in other words, role of innovative firm in emerging countries, and that was edited by John Cantwell. I think I saw his name in this session today. Ed Aman, published by Oxford University Press in 2012. So that was also importantly organized by him, and he gave a lot of feedback. And last one is about the university industry network and Ketchup. And Gabriel and Eduardo and many others involved in this project. And this one, he didn't come to the workshop in person. Of course, we all try to utilize his insight on Ketchup in the context of a lot of universities. Okay, we had a meeting in Cape Town and several places, and that book that came out as book in the title "Developing National System Innovation: University Industry Interaction in Global South," published by Elga 2014. So. This is great achievement, and like me, many other scholars in Global South grew out of this Ketchup project, and we learned from each other's and so on. So this important basis for growth of Ketchup literature in together with the Global X community. So it's great that Dick was scholar based in advanced country, but he has a keen interest in how to make Ketchup happen in the broader context, including Global South. So this is where I thank him greatly to promoting Ketchup as important group of literatures or academic discipline. Okay, so I guess many of us in this room greatly appreciate his contribution to this Ketchup project, and is now important subject in our globalized community and innovation development discipline. And you know, this 4 book all published almost same time from 2012 to 2014. So that means we worked very closely and hard to produce outcome in the short period of time. Okay, so for the sake of time, let me stop here by mentioning this 4 catch-up project. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kyung. So Sean Fagerberg wanted to be here, but he's flying. So I'm going to read what he wrote for Nick. As I am not able to join in person, I will do so in writing. Richard Nelson is the most prominent contributor to innovation studies ever. There are more than 200,000 citations to his work in Google Scholars, dwarfing the impact of other scholars on innovation and development by a wide margin. However, despite his success, he is not prima donna, far from it. Nelson is one of the most open, modest, and generous persons I have come across. I had the pleasure to work with him in the project that led to the publication of the Oxford Handbook of Innovation nearly 2 decades ago. Nelson engaged actively with the various contributions in a very constructive and friendly manner, and contributed in this way significantly to the quality and success of the volume. One of the topics in the handbook, and to which I myself contributed, was the role of innovation in catch-up processes. One point emphasized by Nelson is the discussion of this topic at the time, as well as in his own contributions, was the need to account for the interaction between technological and social and institutional factors in the study of catch-up processes. According to Nelson, success in catch-up processes does not only or mainly depend on technological mastery, but on the ability to mobilize and coordinate the various organizational, managerial, and social competencies required. He has suggested to use the term social technologies for this aspect. Also usually neglected by mainstream economists who, as Nelson points out, through catch-up should be fairly easy. The role of social and institutional aspect for successful catch-up have received attention from economic historians, especially Abramovich, who uses the concept social capabilities for these aspects, and Gershon Krom before him. However, Abramovich has been criticized for being rather vague in his empirical operationalization of the context, and as Nelson points out, in practice, it often boiled down to various measures of educational attainment. Gershon Krom, from whom Abramovich took inspiration, was in one way more daring in his approach when arguing that successful catch-up rests on developing institutional instruments for which there was little or no counterpart in an established industrial country. He based his assessment on a study of the German attempt to catch up with the UK more than a century ago, but held these experiences to be valid only for other technologically lagging countries. However, what are the instruments that poor nations in the world today need to develop in order to catch up? What are these? Nelson points out that these differ across technologies and sectors. Conditions for catch-up are not the same in, say, biotech as in mass-produced consumer goods. Moreover, countries also differ in other respects, for instance, nature, history, level of development, etc., and such contextual differences need to be taken into account in attempts to exploit the potential for catch-up. An interesting and timely challenge concerns the potential for catch-up in renewable energies and related technologies, the spread of which is essential for avoiding the most harmful effects of climate change, which are predicted to be particularly severe in the developing part of the world, for instance, in Africa. Today, 80% of global energy needs are catered for by fossil fuels, the use of which leads to emission of greenhouse gases and harmful climate change. However, the rapid technological progress in renewable energy technologies, energy storage, and use of in other sectors offers hope for avoiding the most detrimental effect of human-created climate change. Nevertheless, the potential for change entailed by the ongoing technological revolution centered on renewable energy is primarily exploited by countries above a certain level of development. For example, in Europe, the US and China, while, for instance, Africa is lagging behind. This is a paradox because the natural condition for benefiting from renewable energy technologies like solar energy are excellent on the African continent. And now where is the need for a surge in electricity supply for supporting sustainable development larger? So what are the factors preventing African countries from exploiting these opportunities, and how can the required social technologies or new institutional instruments be put in place? The global community should be placed to exploit these important questions. And then this was his contributions, and we are moving now to Sunil Mani.
First of all, I wish to thank the organizers for giving me a chance to reflect the contributions of Professor Dick Nelson. And I've also had a very privilege of working very closely with him way back in 2011-12 on a catch-up project. But before I go on to reflecting over my personal relationship with Professor Nelson, I would like to talk about how enduring is his research, in the sense that some of the papers that he has written way back 64 years ago are, I find them to be very highly relevant even in 2023. And one such paper is actually the it is titled The Simple Economics of Basic Scientific Research, and it was published in the Journal of Political Economy way back in 1959. And this paper actually talked about the importance of sustaining basic scientific research, because this is something which is very clearly forgotten in most countries. Even in many advanced countries also, for instance, in Europe, we find that the basic scientific research in a number of key technologies are actually not given much importance. And this is where you have a long gestation period and very high capital investment. And so it calls for some sort of government support for basic scientific research. And this became very apparent and clear during the time when we had the pandemic, and when countries began to race towards developing a vaccine for COVID-19. And only those countries which have been, like for instance, the United States, which have been systematically supporting basic scientific research, has been able to come out with a very credible and vaccine in a very short period of time, because they were doing basic research on new ways of developing vaccines. For instance, the mRNA vaccine that we are referring to. So I think this shows that the various, and then later on, Professor Nelson also wrote a book to which some people have made some veiled references. This is the 1982 book on government and technical progress, where he looked at 7 different industries and how government has played a very important role in sustaining not only basic research, but also applied development research in those industries. And so I think the role of government is thought about not just as an answer to market failure, but rather systemic failures. and government plays a very important role in correcting for systemic failures. And this is what is, contained in the literature on the national system of innovation, which came up much later. So I think a lot of what Professor Nelson has written is very highly relevant, and they have a very strong public policy impact even now. And now, referring to my own personal contacts with Professor Nelson, this was during the period 2010 to 13 period, immediately after he published, along with Professor Odagiri and Professor Goto, a very interesting book, which Professor Kun Lee just referred to. And this book was about the role of intellectual property rights in catching up. But one of the aspects which Professor Nelson said, which was not very much explored in that book, was the TRIPS compliance of national patent regimes, which happened during the period 1995 to 2005 period. And its actual and potential effects on innovative activity in especially in emerging developing countries, which have had used the various kinds of flexibilities in patents. For instance, patents were not allowed, product patents were not allowed in pharmaceuticals, agrochemicals, and food products. And this allowed some countries, for instance, Brazil, India, China, etc., to develop tremendous technological capability in designing new molecules and in pharmaceuticals, and also commercializing them. Okay, so what would happen if the TRIPS compliance, which called for patents in all products, including pharmaceuticals, agrochemicals, and food products. So Professor Nelson actually, during one of the discussions on Catch-up project, while at Bocconi, under the hospitality of his illustrious student, Professor Malarba, invited me to coordinate this project. And so, and Professor Padarapong, who is also participating in current discussion, was actually a member of that project as well. And if you remember, this project was very nicely helped in, by Professor Nelson, who allowed us to conduct all his, invited us to Colombia to conduct all the major meetings related to this project, and gave us very good critical comments on individual country studies, which were actually written. And this project was published as a book in 2013 by Edward Elgar, which is called TRIPS Compliance, National Patent Regimes and Innovation. So in all, what I found working with Professor Nelson is that one could actually sharpen the evidence-based research, using empirical data to substantiate various propositions that we have. And also he did that in a very nice and which is the best of Western scholarship, that I would say, providing very critical comments in a very nice and manner, which without offending the paper writers, which is sometimes very rare for us people in the global South to appreciate what other people have written without offending them. And so I think Professor Nelson's contribution, not just to the to the literature on economics and policy studies of technical change, but also his contributions to developing scholars of all hues from the global South, I think is extremely important, and we must remember that with great gratitude. So I thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
So thank you, Sunil. Now I give the floor to Padarapong.
Good morning, Dick and everyone. Dick has been very kind and supportive. I participated in the Catch-up project on the role of intellectual property rights in Catch-up, led by Professor Goto and Professor Odagiri, and subsequently by Professor Sunil Mani. He just elaborated just now. And there are two things that I learned from Dick in the Catch-up project, which have impact on policy debate in Asia at that time. The first one is that from this study, we learned that a stronger patent regime does not always lead to more innovation and catch up. And in the late 1990s and early 2000s, many developing countries were forced by developed countries, especially the US, to strengthen their patent regimes. The argument is stronger regime promote innovation and foreign direct investment. At that time, I was a researcher and junior policy maker in Thailand. I used DIC work and what I learned from participating in the catch-up project to make an opposition to that kind of attempt in Thailand. Although it failed, at least we could have empirical studies to prove the otherwise. And I remember clearly when I participated in the STS forum in Kyoto, a forum that Japanese government wanted to establish similar to World Economic Forum in Davos for science, technology, and innovation policy. In a group discussion, an official from WIPO tried to convince other participants on the virtue of stronger patent regime, and I cited the empirical work of DIC and others in the catch-up project to oppose him. That's the first event that I used DIC work and the one from catch-up project on the policy debate. The second issue is the benefits of the Bayh-Dole Act in other countries. Like I remember that in the late 1990s and early 2000s, several countries in Asia, including Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and others, tried to adopt laws similar to US Bayh-Dole Act. And many government officials and academics in these countries consider the act like mantra to facilitate university industry collaboration. And I had an advantage of studying DIC's work on Bayh-Dole Act and able to argue with the Thai policymakers that such an act might not be sufficient solution and we should do something else more to make it work, like enhancing absorptive and innovative capability of firms which effectively collaborate with universities. And taking Japan experience, which now I am a resident, after more than 20 years of introduction of the Bayh-Dole Act, like in Japan, only a small number of universities are successful in collaborating with industry, and many of those were successful even before the introduction of the Bayh-Dole Act like law in Japan. So these are the two episodes that I used the work and opportunity that I learned from DIC, from the catch-up project in the real policy debate. Although we might be more reasonable from academic point of view, but we are losing ground in terms of the real policy making. The stronger patent regime like TIP Plus is developing now. So what should be done? I think this is the big question for all of us in Globalix community. So thank you very much, DIC. I'm really happy to be part of this event to celebrate your great contribution to innovation studies today. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Patarapon. And finally, I'm going to give the floor to Rashid, and congrats for your birthday.
Thank you, Gabriela, and greetings from the CRIS network. It's a great recognition having been invited to speak as part of this august distinguished panel, felicitating Professor Richard Nelson, an intellectual titan of our times. My personal encounters with Professor Nelson have been very brief, mainly through the Chris Freeman Centenary Lecture Series that I co-founded with a few alumni of Globalix and under the guidance of Ben Tokey. Dear DIC, you participated in our programs several times. You never declined an invitation, replied to all our emails, and were always kind and generous. The inaugural event of our In Conversation series featured you, interviewed by Franco. I remember that you had to do this interview from California very early in the morning. Franco was rather worried over the prospect of making you sit through 2 hours of most unkindest interrogation. But you pleasantly surprised us all and cheerfully addressed all the questions, and the session extended to nearly 3 hours. That was a memorable performance, Dick. Thank you so much. I have only a very elementary understanding of your work and definitely not qualified to speak about your contribution to catch up. Apologies for stepping over to a more familiar terrain. What fascinated me most have been your views on human know-how and the expressiveness of the human language. I found one statement particularly impressive. You said in one of our programs that you were thinking about how to write a book in great detail as to how to hit a forehand in tennis. This was rather enlightening to me. And an exploratory reading showed how beautiful you made a case for tacitness. You said that the language we have is very limited in describing reality. And the issue of tacitness comes about from this limitation of our language and its inability to characterize different types of things. I understand that an important contribution from you and Sid Winter has been hybridizing the formal and appreciative ways of looking at knowledge. This interspecific marriage has triggered a few tensions in the science and technology policy literature, further fueling other recent debates, notably in artificial intelligence research. Professor Nelson, I wish you all the best and a healthy, long life. I thank KJ, Franco, Erika, and the organizing team for this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks, Rashid. I'm going to pass the floor to the organizers. And Dick, we love you. KJ, you are mute.
Then thank you very much, all the speakers and the session chairs. There was an unusual discipline displayed by all the speakers. And now, dear friends who are gathered here, all the friends, colleagues, and admirers spoke so far to listen from you. Now the floor is open for next 15 minutes. We would have loved to give you more time. Unfortunately, Dick, I'm very sorry that we are troubling him to make him for long. And the floor is now open for next 15 minutes. If you are generous to others, please be brief. Please raise your hand. Yeah, please, Michael, go ahead.
Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you, Dick Nelson. I wonder if you would reflect back on your earlier collaboration with Nathan Rosenberg as to his more optimistic view on the extent to which large innovations tended to be more inclusive at the lower end than for the very rich, and how this might have changed with time. Thank you.
That is really wonderful. Thank you very much. Now, you are so generous to others. You can raise your hand. Bhaskaran, you don't need to keep quiet. Jeffrey? Yeah. Okay, John Adioti, please.
Well, I'm
glad and excited to be here today to see so many old faces. I've made a comment to everybody. So Luke is a very dear person to me. I just want to say I love you, and I pray that you will be strong. You will still live many more years for us to see you and to learn from you. So God bless you. Happy birthday.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much. That's really passionate, I must say. Just really. Sujit, anyone? Eduardo. Isabel? Okay, you're free. Over to you.
Okay, great to share with you, all of you, and I just want to tell to Dick that thank you, because in my first presentation in a drawing conference when I was a PhD student, Dick was the commenter, and he gave to me a lot of ideas of how to continue with my PhD projects. So it was really relevant for me. And then I want to thank really Dick. Maybe you didn't know about that it was very important, your comments in that moment, long time ago in Aalborg University. Thank you.
Eduardo? Yeah, who is coming next? I don't know any hands up now. I'm not able to see. Yeah, Bhaskaran, unmute yourself. Please unmute your mic, please.
Thank you. Thank you, KJ. Dick, wish you a happy birthday, and I'm honored to be here and participate in this event. My introduction to Dick intellectually was when I was a student at SPRU in Sussex University. I come from political science, international relations background. So when I went to SPRU, I was doing my thesis on technology accumulation in Indian space program and missile technology control regime. I had to do some conceptual background to my work. I was taking master's classes. I was introduced to technological chain, technology transfer, national innovation system. So that was the time, 1993, the book on national innovation system was published. I was so fascinated, and I tried to incorporate into, as a lot of people at the time know, this was only developed countries context, so very few studies. Sanjay Lal had published something on technology transfer, sub-Saharan Africa and all, but not much on Indian and Chinese context. So that was so first Rio conference, GlobalX conference was the first time I met him physically. And what fascinated me was his dedication to GlobalX community. He traveled always, GlobalX was all over the world. So despite his advanced age, he always traveled to be there with our fellow scholars. And he was very approachable and very inspiring, amazing personality and human. That's how I see him. His contribution, not just intellectual side of it. It's he's a Mount Everest of innovation community, but the human side is what fascinates me. So long live Dick. Thank you so much for organizing this, for all the organizers, and I hope GlobalX will always remember you. Thank you.
Isabel, to you, over to you.
I met Dick Nelson, I think in 2001, 2002 on PhD day at SPRU. I was presenting, and then Dick was in the audience, and he posed me a question, and I think I showed the team at least 3 or 4 answers. And after that, after all the presentations, he came to me and we discussed something. At that point as well, Kit Pavitt was there, and he was reinforcing some of the points, and also made sure that I was always treating not Richard Nelson, but Dick Nelson. No, you need to take it as a Dick Nelson. Anyway, I want just to wish a happy birthday and thank very much to the organizer for this fantastic event.
Thank you, Sylvie. Over to you, Mark.
Hello. I would say just a few words, but I think we are really grateful to Dick Nelson. I met him thanks to François Chenet. And at that time, we were just a few people trying to depart from the way of thinking about economics as an equilibrium. And we have still a lot to do to understand why dynamics is essential, and that the driver of this dynamic is innovation. Thank you very much, Dick Nelson, because you started from the point of view of equilibrium. Then you understood one of the first one in the community of scholars that this was wrong and that we need to understand differently the working of economy. Your contribution has been essential and is still essential. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mark. The floor is yours, Liang.
Hi, many thanks for the organizers establishing this great online session. And I would like to thank Professor Dick Nelson for his patience and insightful comments on my research about the Chinese industrialization last year when I was doing my visiting scholar research at Yale University. And actually what impressed me most is not only Dick's great contribution like National Innovation System and evolutionary theories for the Chinese young scholars and generations, but also his patience and his kinds and his detailed comments and nice toward the young scholars like me. So I would like to show my great thanks for Dick Nelson and happy birthday to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, if anybody else would like to come up, please raise your hand. Else, yeah. I think this is time that we now hear from our dear Dick Nelson. Dick, you know how much you have stolen the hearts of your colleagues, your friends, your admirers, especially from the young scholar from the Global South. Now we would like to hear your reflections. Over to you, dear Dick Nelson.
In recent years, I have become a bit rickety, and there's been the COVID epidemic, alas. And as a consequence, regretfully, I have not participated in person with various recent GlobalX meetings. And I have very much missed being there. From its beginnings, the GlobalX gatherings have been one of my favorite occasions, bringing me together with a wonderful group of colleagues. Considering problems and topics that interest me greatly in a relaxed atmosphere which encourages and supports lively and productive discussion and analysis. I deeply appreciate you all my friends at GlobalX, for reaching out to me today. Our community, the GlobalX community, is really quite special. Our colleagues are at once a very diverse lot in terms of where we reside and work, our scholarly backgrounds, and what we are doing professionally. But at the same time, most of us are quite united in a common point of view on many issues. And in particular, we see economic development as an evolutionary process that involves the interaction and co-evolution of economic, social, and political institutions. I would like to begin by highlighting the major influence that Christopher Freeman and Spru more generally have played in our thinking and style of research and analysis. Many of the founders of GlobalX had studied with Chris or have been influenced by him greatly through stays at Spru and involvement in activities in which Chris and Spru played central roles. I know this characterizes Benteke, Luke, and myself, and many of the rest of us too. What I find remarkable and encouraging is that the general point of view continues to be held and articulated by the successors of the founders of GlobalX, and now by the following generation, which increasingly is forming the basis of the continuation of GlobalX. This continuation and further development of a particular broad perspective across the generations is not the result of any rote carrying forward of what each of us has learned from our teachers, but rather by judgments made by each of us that this perspective on economic development fits with what we have come to know is the empirical reality. And it's time to put up the first of the slides.
Trying to share it. Oh my God, it is, where is the slide? So much. No, let's stop. I'm trying to slide. Oh my dear. Kiran, are you over there?
I guess maybe we do without them.
Okay, very nice.
Yeah, it's not working very well.
Sorry, I just go, it looks like I download the file. Yes. 1 second. Sorry about it. One second.
We can forget about the slide if it doesn't work.
I'm opening it. Yeah, it's here. Stop video, mute, security. Okay. Are you able to see it now?
We are seeing it. Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry that
the first one.
I'm not good at
Move to the first one.
share. Yeah,
That's better.
right. Sorry about it.
All right. Yeah, we at GlobalX understand rapid economic development as an evolutionary process with the path taken not foreseeable in any detail, and in which efforts to plan and control tightly what is happening are likely to seriously weaken the development process. There will be failures as well as successes along the way. Successful catching up requires a continuing range of efforts to introduce new ways of doing things, but it also requires flexibilities to support those that are successful and to avoid further commitments to those that do not seem to be, at least until capabilities in this arena have been significantly enhanced. I note that this certainly does not mean that effective economic development requires reliance on basically unregulated private enterprise operating on unfettered markets. Indeed, for economic development to lift the living standards of the bulk of the population, a vital part of the process needs to be the development of an effective governmental structure capable of regulating and constraining the activities of firms to protect workers and customers, and more generally, hold business interests accountable for and deter actions generating significant social harm. In recent years, it has become apparent that active government policies are needed to prevent a small group from seizing the lion's share of the productivity gains of economic development, leaving the bulk of the population nearly as poor as they had been. It also is important to recognize that an evolutionary perspective on the development process does not imply that government planning and control of the development of certain kinds and areas of economic activity is not an important part of the process. The pathways taken by a number of the countries that in recent years have experienced rapid catch-up to the economic frontiers has been marked by strong governmental planning and investment in a variety of areas of infrastructure, as transportation systems, telecommunications and other public utilities, medical care systems, and funding and educational system that both lifts the capabilities of the bulk of the young population and enables advanced training in fields important to development. Further, in the countries that have been successful in catching up, a variety of government programs have helped and supported the development by firms of new capabilities and the improvement of their support structures. Nor does an evolutionary perspective on the catch-up process mean that publicly owned firms cannot play a major role in advancing technology in certain areas of industry, or that public financial institutions cannot be an important player in the development process. They have in several of the countries that have experienced rapid catch-up towards the economic frontier. More generally, I propose that there are two lessons that should be drawn from the now many careful empirical studies of the development experience of many countries. And we can try the next slide.
Yeah.
First, that economic development is an evolutionary process, and successful catching up requires both significant efforts in innovation, some of which are going to succeed and others which will flounder, and a flexible ability to recognize what seems to work and what doesn't, and to learn from that experience. Second, that both the standard economic model of neoclassical theory, touting the virtues of markets and free enterprise, and the literature of some years ago on the virtues of general economic planning vastly oversimplify the development process and provide very poor guidance to policy. Not so many years ago, the dominant view among economists of the principal causal reason why countries with low levels of productivity and incomes were poor was that they had much lower levels of capital per worker than higher income countries, and the development would occur naturally if investment were increased, either through domestic channels or foreign investment, or supplemented by funding from international agencies. It was assumed, sometimes explicitly and sometimes implicitly, that the major differences between rich and poor countries in the effectiveness of the technologies and other practices that they are employing would decrease more or less automatically with an increase in investments. I think it was researchers at SPRU more than anywhere else who were prominent among students of economic development who came to question that view and place learning to use and effectively adopt improved technologies. More generally, learning to master new capabilities, center stage in what happens in successful catching up. While often linked to physical investments, the effective adoption of new technology involves innovating in a non-trivial sense of the term. A very important part of the knowledge needed to progress economically is achieved only through learning by doing and using. And as the catching up process advances, increasingly R&D is required for a country to catch up further. A central aspect of this perspective has been recognized that in most fields of economic activity, a number of different institutions are involved in successful innovations. Firms, public universities and research laboratories, professional and technical societies. From this perspective, effective economic development requires the development of effective innovation systems. I note that when research and writing on innovation systems was just beginning, and here Bengtaka and Chris played a very important role in those early writings. The very significant differences across economic sectors in the way firms learned and the key institutions supporting the development of new technologies tended to be repressed. These days, these differences are much better recognized, and the concept of a sectoral innovation system, in which Franco has played such an important role, have become more prominent in the literature. However, policymakers still need more education on this front. There is a great reluctance to recognize explicitly and follow the consequences of the fact that sectors differ remarkably. Let's put up the next slide. This leads me to make two arguments. First, all successful modern economies are very mixed systems. All of them now, including China, making extensive use of private enterprise and markets, and all also employing government in a wide variety of roles. And it is important to recognize that economic sectors differ greatly on how they are organized and governed. The old debate between capitalism and central planned economies, I think, is obsolete, and we should get away from it. What we have now is much more complex mixed structures, and we need to recognize that much more explicitly. Second, while the key to the catch-up process is the development of new capabilities, that process involves the co-evolution of technologies and a wide variety of institutions, economic, political, and social, that support, constrain, and guide these. I have highlighted several central aspects of what I believe is the basic shared perspective of many of us in GlobalX. Let me repeat them. A recognition that the economic development process is evolutionary in nature and not predictable in detail, and not amenable to tight planning. That the principal driver of economic progress is advanced in technological and related bodies of know-how, and the key challenge for economies behind the frontier is to learn and acquire the capabilities to catch up. That modern economies have a complex structure, where they're operating depending on the effective interaction of economic, political, and social institutions, with the key institutions and the divisions of labor among them differing from sector to sector. I also believe that we share a point of view on the nature of knowledge in economics and the social sciences more generally, and on the nature of productive research. In 2021, the Journal of Industrial and Corporate Change published one of the last articles Christopher Freeman had put together before he died, entitled History, Co-Evolution, and Economic Growth. In it, he used the term reasoned history to describe the research methodology he was using and the way he was presenting his findings. In a number of places, I have used the term appreciative theory to describe much the same point of view. The basic argument is that the lion's share of the understanding by economists of what makes the system they are studying work is in the form of qualitative discussions, descriptions, and narratives, spliced by numbers and structured in a reasoned but not a formal way. The qualitative aspects of our understanding are basic. The quantitative measures we use in our statistical analyses help to size and shape our qualitative understanding, but do not make any sense outside of a basically qualitative picture. In many, but not all cases, our appreciative theory is shaped and sharpened by formal models and is stronger when it is. However, formal models should be regarded as an aid to appreciative theory, which is where our understanding resides, and not as depicting our understanding in their own right. I note that this is a point of view not shared by most economists or social scientists more generally, and runs counter in many respects to the view of what science and scientific research are all about held, at least until relatively recently, by mainline philosophers of science. So we at Global-X are in many senses bucking against the perspectives championed by our home disciplines, and at least the more traditional notions than what science is about. I think this is particularly so for those in economics who are involved with Global-X. So we have a hard position to articulate, to get across, and to defend. I want to conclude by saying again how much I've learned from and enjoyed my involvement with Global-X over the years, and how much I appreciate my colleagues, you, now reaching out to me. I believe that the point of view I have articulated today articulates the perspective shared by most of us. At the same time, I hope that my arguments here may stimulate more of the kind of discussion and interactions that has made Global-X such a stimulating and rewarding assembly. Thank you all so much for this gathering.
Thank you very much, dear Dick, for those reflections. And I'm sure this is just a beginning, and we will keep the ball rolling. And with these words, I would like to invite Franco to say formally the vote of thanks.
Well, just a few words. It has been a wonderful celebration, and I think it's been a great gathering of the Globalist community, friends, colleagues, students have been really shown so much admiration, so much gratitude to Dick, and so much affection. This is what also transpired today, affections to Dick for many of the aspects of Dick, his great contributions to economics, development, to his great participation to Global-X, and also, as many of you said, as being a great mentor to young scholars and young students that have been stimulated and helped so much by Dick. So I think at the end of this a great celebration, I want to thank Eric, and I want to thank particularly KJ, who has been working so hard in making this great event possible. And to you, Dick, I think we thank you for your great intellectual leadership and for your continuous interaction and participation. Thank you, Dick.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much. Let us all give a big hand to Dick for the day. And I think we had a long session, and the whole session was, I thought, unlike the previous ones we have seen to celebrate Dick Nelson, this was truly reflective of the Global-X culture that you all have evolved and nurtured. And let us meet again. And I invite all of you for the next Global-X 20th International Conference in Kerala, October 12 to 14. And you will be, I look forward to receiving all of you, and all of you will be our honored guest. On behalf of the GSB, on behalf of the presidency, thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Dick should have a wonderful day, and I'm sure Franco will assist him in having that.
Absolutely, Bentoke. And too bad that you are not here with us.
Indeed.
We miss you, Bentoke.
We all agree with Luke Sute on this.
Thank you very much to all of you. It has been really a pleasure to see you all on the screen.
Okay.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone. AJ, if you take some picture. Group picture.
I don't know how to take the picture. Somebody can take all these things, in fact. Unfortunately, I'm not
group picture.
I think how to take this I think I don't know whether.
Use your mobile
Somebody
phone.
do that. Somebody should
Okay,
do
take it from here.
that.
Okay, I'll take it from here. Oh, that's right. That is the way. And 1 second, please don't go away.
So Dick must be there. Dick,
Yeah, that's great. It's great. All of you are there. All of
yes,
you are
yes.
there. Erika, okay, all of you are there. Erika had to leave in between something very urgent. That's why, otherwise should have been here.
Okay.
Yeah, I've taken this one picture at least. Yeah, that's good. Thank you for your beautiful smile for the picture.
Dick and
Thank
Bravo.
you.
Dick,
Bye.
bye. We'll catch up. We'll catch up. Dick, we'll
Yes.
catch up.
Bye-bye.
You-
Okay, okay, very good.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Mamo,
Yes, that was nice.
you are looking like
I can-
Satya Sai in India.
But I had another meeting, but I canceled it because of you.
You are always nice.
Rajesh, you okay? Rajesh is there.
Good,
Oh,
Good, I'm good. Thank you so much.
Franco,
So-
I think have a
Yes.
nice time with the Dick.
Yes.
Dick will come and meet you there. I wanted to
Yeah.
be there, in fact, today. In fact, I could not.
Yes, yes.
I will get my visa. I don't
Kiran is gone? Okay,
Bye. Okay.
good to see
Okay,
you.
bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Yanis, could you please?
Yanis is there.
I'm
Yeah.
going to send you an email. You should be here for the Globalix. I'm going to send an invitation. You will be our most honored guest here. I not written you for ages. My apologies. My apologies. Yeah, thanks.
You must,
Martin,
KJ,
please
you
let
must
me.
declare that Mamo is from Kerala and you
I
are
know
from
you will not be allowed to go back. They will say
And you
that here is our Satya Sai Baba here. So they will make us a godman. Okay, I think Dick, you have been staying back long. You must be tired. Please take some.
Okay.
Please
Wait.
Thank you so
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Like Franco,
Yes.
we'll talk.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. I'll close only at the end after Ankateva.
Yeah.
How is Malaysia for you?
Wait,
You just got to become a Malaysian.
yes.
It's midnight here.
Yeah, Rajesh.
Where is Bhaskaran?
Mamoji,
No.
how are you?
It's like
I just want to take a picture of you. Yes, yes. Good, Bhaskaran.
Rosanne,
Nice.
I think we have in Met. Rosanne, you
Yeah.
you
I
are.
was at SPRU a long time ago.
Okay.
Look.
Good.
I worked with the Embraer and aeronautics.
Okay, very good. very
I
good.
had one of the chapters of your book once about sectoral systems of innovation.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember. Now I remember. We have met. Sorry about it.
Okay.
Yeah,
how
some
is
globally,
Bhaskaran?
but it was many times ago. So
We have grown old. We have the freedom. We have the right to be forgetful.
yeah, exactly. And
Yanis,
there are
how
so
are
many
you?
information.
Yanis, Professor Yanis, how are you? How is Greece? Your finance minister is here. Your finance minister is coming to Kerala.
Mhm.
Hello, you have to unmute your mic.
Yes,
Your finance minister, I think, is coming to Kerala.
yeah, perhaps, yes.
We have a great.
Oh, well, that's next year on October.
No, our conference is this year, October. I will be sending a mail tonight. I'll be sending a mail tonight.
Okay,
Personal mail.
okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I have not been able to get in touch with you. My apologies. Extremely sorry, honestly.
Perhaps you send me something about this Globalix.
I'll send you an email today. And your finance minister is coming for a major knowledge fest that Kerala is organizing in August.
Okay,
Yeah, that's.
great.
You are doing well. You are looking same, no difference.
Okay.
Yeah, you're looking, keeping strong. Okay. Bhaskaran,
Yes, KJ.
how can you keep quiet? You never, I never find you.
No, it's
In Malaysia, discipline.
long day.
Long day. How are you, my Bhaskaran?
It's almost yeah, it's past midnight here.
My,
Mamo, how
It's very-
Bhaskar is keeping quiet. Bhaskar normally talks a lot. I don't know. I think Malaysia disciplined him. We should ask Raj what is discipline.
No.
no, it's good that he is there. Midnight, but it's-
I'll see you in
Nice.
Kerala in October,
You should
and
come. I'm
we
going
will
right
talk.
in. Yeah, I've seen your paper. Yeah.
We will keep in reserve. We can talk when we meet.
Yeah.
Rajesh, you are in Australia, or where are you?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. I'm in Canberra, Australia.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Long time.
What
I've
time is
seen
it?
your emails.
And what time is it in Canberra now?
Oh,
Canberra.
yeah, it might be
Midnight.
1:30,
Oh, 2
o'clock
a.m.
Morning.
2
Yeah.
a.m.
2 a.m.
So it's far
You should better sleep.
more than Malaysia.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Bhaskaran
Yeah,
is just
yeah.
midnight.
He is ahead of, I think, 2 hours ahead of
2.5 hours.
us.
Yeah.
Only 2 hours ahead of you. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I think it is nice meeting friends after a long
Yes.
day. Coyote was there.
Nice to see
We
you,
don't
yeah.
Talk anything.
Yeah,
else.
it was really nice organizing
After a long
this
time,
event.
all the friends
Hopefully,
will
a bit,
I think we should,
Seeing so many people, because we have not met with COVID
right.
last 2-3
Because
years.
it's really not good. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's far away.
So
Yeah.
I hope Globlex in Kerala will be amazing this time to see
Yeah,
all
our government is very committed to
old
support.
friends.
Our government is so our finance minister is very
Yeah.
committed to support. Of course, they have a lot of money constraint. We are trying to go to Delhi to get some money. That's
Yeah.
yes.
Bas,
So-
when will it be? When you will be in London? When are you coming?
I'm coming
Yes,
21st,
welcome.
22nd of June.
Rajesh, all well with you?
Good, sir. Good.
22nd.
Yep.
22nd
much.
June.
I can't be there. It's a pity. I wish it was earlier because I was going to be there on 17th.
I
17th
have
of June.
teaching here. I have to complete my teaching before leaving. Yeah, that's the problem.
How great to have seen you, though. My God.
Where are you teaching, Bas? At SPRU, or where are you teaching?
No. I'm in University Malaya here.
Malaya.
Okay.
Yeah.
The semester ends in mid-June.
But
Yeah.
are you still teaching in Sussex somewhere?
No. In University Malaya.
Okay. That I know. Yeah.
Mm. That's good. But anyway, it's great to see you both. Yeah. All of you.
Anyway,
I think some light time like this, that's nice.
Yeah.
Some light talk without being recorded, without
Yeah.
anybody. That's nice.
So,
yeah, we have not
Rajesh-
met for so long. It's
Yeah.
nice to share words. Yeah.
Rajesh has put me in this Chris thing. So I hope you all.
Yeah. Your next is your yes. That's going to be. I
Thank
think,
Rajesh, and I wrote some. He asked me to write autobiography. I wrote something, and he said, no, you can't write it. He failed me 3 times.
Don't write it. This will be
He
extra.
said no. Then later I wrote it, and he says it's fantastic.
No, when you write, you there is no chance to say any lie. That is why extempore everything should be. Otherwise,
No,
you
Professor.
write and articulate.
KJ, what Mamo's autobiographical sketch is beautiful. He has written it like
does.
it's a very touching thing. I have
Bhaskaran
put
is
it on
in it
our
also.
website.
Bhaskaran is
I
into
have
it.
put it.
He does.
I have
everything
put it on.
in a wonderful manner. Whatever he does it. He does it so nicely. He's so committed. That is evident. He's so.
No, I asked first Rajesh, then I asked my daughter Ade.
Where is your daughter now? She was.
Yes, she loves India. Genuinely, she wants
She's
to
in India
come.
now? She's in India now?
She's teaching in a college here. They love her. They call her
Where?
bright
Which college?
star.
Which
They
college?
give her all kinds of gifts.
In
She's really
India?
nice.
Is she in
But
India
she
now?
wants, no, not in India, but she wants to come in the Globalist. Can I bring her?
Oh, why not? Oh, welcome.
Yeah, because she loves to, she has got
Please, by
connections.
all means.
She was about 3 months. She was in the rural area in India. And they,
I wanted to invite her at that time, but my institute, at that time I was in another institute. Now I have more freedom.
but the connection is very good. She still keeps very strong connection. So when I said I'm going to,
Welcome.
I'm going to Kerala, she says,
Please bring her.
So she went before, previously also she was in India teaching.
Yes, she did. Yes, she was doing things like that. Yeah. And but it'd be nice to bring her.
Really
And will your children be there too? Will we be able to see them?
My son is here. My daughter is in the US. My son
In the
is
US.
Australia. He came
Australia.
back. My son was in Australia. He came back
Okay.
because my daughter is in the US. So I need at least one person here. So
right,
son is he's staying. He's
And Amika is also in London. So daughter of Rajesh. So I must see her
He's
also.
in Sussex, no?
Yeah.
She's in Sussex, yeah.
IDS, yeah.
IDS.
She went to Sussex, IDS.
Yeah,
Bhaskaran
it's
was
a
in
nice,
Spru.
it's a good place. Yeah.
Yes, she went to the best place, best education.
I think that's the only place I found you can have a beer. I went for a beer in Sussex bar. Then I found another guy sitting there in a dhoti, Malayali dress. And we started talking. Whom all I know, he knows. Whom all he knows, I know. But we have never met. Turned out to be a good friend. He's John Samuel.
John Samuel.
We
Yeah,
met
okay.
We met there first time.
John
He
Samuel.
was in dhoti and having beer. Interesting.
John Samuel is an amazing guy.
Amazing. Very nice.
Yeah.
See, mostly that time there were a few Indians doing PhD there. All of them are in IDS. Only me, I was in Spru.
In Spru. But you're with us. But we connected. You remember?
Yeah.
I also came to Spru because of Chris. Chris, we used to.
He was never surprised to see me there.
How come you're there, right? But Spru, Sussex used to attract a lot of Indians. Even Spru.
Yeah, but most of them, they ended up in IDS.
You're right.
IDS, yes.
Not in Spru, not in Spru.
Right.
Yes.
Only a couple of visiting scholars like Mirnali. There was one.
Your time, Ashok was very close because when I joined JNU, I had a doubt. We were taking a project on industry university interaction. I had a doubt whether to use innovation system perspective. I was not into Globalix. I'm talking 2001 before Globalix.
Yeah. I know.
Then I asked whether or triple helix. I asked my boss. He immediately called Chris. Chris, my young colleague has this doubt. Then he called me to meet Chris when I was going to Finland. He arranged a meeting with Chris in Spru. And Pari Patel was my nice guest.
Yeah.
Pari was very nice. He took me for lunch and all. I could never reciprocate that. At least I should invite him this year here. At least we can have a dinner with him.
Please do.
It was very
long time scholar there. He was.
Anyway, so let's just now. Great to see you.
I think wonderful.
All right. Okay. Good night.
Thank you so much.
Nice chatting with all of you.
Please sleep, rest.
Yeah.
Sleep, and Rajesh, because you are late.
Sure. Thank you, Professor KJ, and thank you, Kiran Kumar.
Kiran had to go and
his
wife and from the airport.
Nice to see you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Indus has taken pictures, so send it. Ask her to send it.
Sure. I'll send. I know we have taken pictures for you only. You need pictures.
I don't know. See, for the first time.
I want Bhaskaran's picture with me, please. He disappeared.
We have so many pictures. Don't worry.
I'm not happy that I don't see him.
Fortunately, during the Globalix time, I never had to do this I always had a staff to do this. So I was sharing in a slide I was doing for the first time.
Oh, really? You were doing it?
I didn't know how to do it. Otherwise, somebody is there to help you, so it is.
I think Panagot, is he still there? Hello, Panagot. We'll send
Panagiatis, are you here?
Yeah.
If you are still here,
I will
Okay.
leave after you people leave.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then, bye.
Okay.
Okay,
Let's,
bye bye.
let's
Bye-bye,
set
bye-bye.
Professor
Good night,
KJ
good
free.
night, good
Bye-bye.
night.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye bye.
Okay, Mama, see you
I
later.
think
Yeah,
we should
bye-bye.
Thank you so
disconnect.
much. God bless you. Thank you.
Bye,
Thank
bye,
you.
bye.
And sir, pass my greetings to Ananthi.
Bye.
Okay, okay, bye.
Thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you.
Okay, take care. Nice,
Yeah, thank you.
nice,
Thank you.
Mamos. It was
Yes.
nice. So we will catch up. I will talk to you. I want to talk to
Yes.
you. There are a lot of issues. There are a lot of issues.
Okay.
I think we have to I'm going to take up the issue with Bendoke saying that this election is not very good job. Election, you have to have maybe maximum 2/3 of the members can be elected. 1/3 should be nominated.
I see.
There are a lot of people. See, when I write an email, you guys, you remember those days, you have so much of your communication.
No, you're doing a lot of
When I
work.
send the call for paper, I'm telling you, when I send the draft call for paper, only one person responded.
Wow, wow, wow,
And
wow.
what I want to tell them, nobody
Yeah.
forced you in. You all contested election. Then why did you contest?
No, I understand. Yeah.
I have a big problem of mobilizing money. I cannot. I'm mobilizing money for. I got money for the keynote speakers.
All right.
Normally, organizers don't finance international travel.
Okay.
I can give only local support. But
Yeah,
now
yeah.
I let to find money at least on 20-30 people. Where is the money? Yesterday there was a GSP.
And now we have problems with the Africa Leaks used to.
They don't have
now
support.
they don't have money. So
They don't
so
have
I think let's see
Actually,
what we could do. I don't know what we could do.
let us see. We will find some way out.
Yeah. No, don't worry. You just don't stress. It's very important.
But
We do
I think in near future I want to get this Global Leaks constitution changed.
No,
We
no,
need people who want to work for things.
That's right.
So many people.
Yeah.
Raja is so committed. You
No,
are so committed, but you can be defeated in election now.
Yeah.
Not defeated. I don't want to say defeated. Sorry, I'm not making you. I'm saying that election is some people don't even contest.
Yes, yes.
There should
Anyway,
be
thank you. Anyway, thank you so much.
We'll catch up.
You-
We'll catch up.
Pass my loving greetings to your children because I really.
I know my daughter and son. They all know.
I saw them and now
My
I don't
son
see
is
them.
not back from the work. My wife is in the ground floor, so she
Yes. Okay. Just pass them back. Yes.
Okay,
But when
then-
I come, well, at least I will see her. But I won't see the children unless they come.
my regards to your family and your daughter. And
It would be
take
nice
care.
if they come and connect them to my daughter. Would have been really nice. Nice. Just for them to know each other is good. Like we know each other. Like you and I.
You should get connected. My
Nice.
daughter is also very much liking. She is working with the.
I liked her when I met her. They're very nice children.
She's-
Anyway, keep strong, my brother. Thank you so much. God
You
bless
too. You too.
Yes.
I know you are. Nobody can keep you less strong. You're always strong. Okay. Let us catch. Let us catch. Nice.
You are
talking.
very motivating. You are very inspiring. No, everyone, I think they can see what you are doing is incredible. Thank you so much.
I was longing for a gathering like this. To be very frank,
No, what he did is amazing. This was not easy to do, but it was just so nice.
Online is simple, not a big deal. So it's
No,
not-
but getting all these people to come and do
all
present.
of them were nice. Now, that people were nice. They wanted
People,
to
I
come.
mean, yes.
They wanted
so
to
many
come
things
this weekend, not because nothing to do with me. They wanted to come.
Yeah,
They have affection for Dick, so they came.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, Mamo. Okay. So you please disconnect so
Yes.
that
Hello. Adaya. Yes. Yeah, I'm coming now. Huh?